The memory of the operation remained clinically clear to Claire Estrelle long after the mission had concluded, not because of emotional attachment or lingering trauma, but because the Officio Assassinorum conditioned its operatives to retain combat recollection with precise accuracy. Every route, every expenditure of ammunition, every shift in terrain and enemy behavior was retained as archived memory. The assignment on murder was not considered extraordinary by the standards of the Imperium. Isolated eradication operations against Traitor Astartes occurred continuously across countless worlds. What separated this deployment from prior operations was the environment itself and the instability of the accompanying operative. Claire had deployed beside sanctioned killers before: death cult assassins, Culexus operatives, naval recon detachments, and even Militarum Tempestus insertion teams. None of them compared to an Eversor assassin during active deployment. The individual designated 9X had not behaved like a conventional human asset. He had operated closer to a contained biological weapon that required temporary directional guidance rather than command authority. The distinction became important within the first day of planetary insertion. The operation briefing had classified the target as a 4-man Word Bearers Reconnaissance and Ritual Recovery Unit. Their estimated strength should not have warranted dual temple deployment. A single Vindicare operative normally possessed sufficient capability to eliminate a force of that size through sequential removal and environmental manipulation. The decision to authorize an Eversor attachment indicated strategic concern far beyond simple execution probability. Imperial intelligence believed the Traitor Astartes were searching for an abandoned Xenos structure buried beneath the equatorial basalt valleys of Murder. Records recovered from fragmented expedition archives suggested the site predated the Great Crusade itself. Murder had remained largely untouched since the catastrophic losses suffered during the expeditionary fleets of the Horus Heresy era. The Megarachnid populations still dominated enormous sections of the world. Orbital scans showed minimal permanent settlement activity due to the impossibility of maintaining stable defensive infrastructure against migrating swarms. Even orbital reconnaissance was unreliable because thick atmospheric particle concentrations interfered with Auspex fidelity. Claire understood the hidden concern immediately after reviewing the mission file. The Word Bearers were not excavating relics for technological recovery. They were searching for ritual space. That distinction justified execution priority. The records described the target squad as veteran survivors attached to a fragmented Word Bearers warband operating near the Ghoul stars. Their leader was identified as Malak Voran, formerly a Dark Apostle initiate before the destruction of his parent host during internal Legion conflict nearly 2 centuries earlier. Intelligence indicated Voran specialized in archaeological recovery and occult rites associated with demonic manifestation. Accompanying him were 3 other Traitor Astartes. Cor Phaedrus functioned as heavy weapons support. Terran Valis operated as communications and reconnaissance specialist. The final member, identified only as Baal Corvin, was classified as a close assault specialist, with confirmed involvement in civilian massacres across 6 Imperial frontier systems. All 4 were marked for immediate termination. Claire Estrelle herself was considered one of the more effective long-range elimination specialists within the Vindicare Temple's Segmentum Pacificus operational division. She measured approximately 174 centimeters in height and maintained a mass just below 60 kilograms without armor integration. Her physical profile remained intentionally unremarkable outside temple operations. Pale skin tone, dark brown hair maintained at regulation length, and gray irises altered slightly through optic enhancement surgeries allowed her to blend among highborn populations when necessary. A thin scar crossed beneath her left ear, extending toward the jawline, the result of an anti-personnel fragmentation wound sustained during a prior assignment against a rogue planetary governor's private militia. Her homeworld records had long been erased following temple induction during early adolescence. Like many Vindicare operatives, her original identity no longer held relevance beyond fragmented psychological archives, inaccessible even to most inquisitorial authorities. Claire's specialization centered on environmental patience and predictive elimination. Vindicare training focused less on reaction speed and more upon probabilistic certainty. Every movement, every breath cycle, every environmental variable surrounding a target was analyzed until termination became mathematically inevitable. Temple instructors often described the process as reducing war into geometry. 9X represented the complete opposite philosophy. The Eversor assassin arrived aboard the deployment vessel in total restraint confinement. Claire first observed him within the preparation chambers beneath the strike cruiser's ventral launch decks. Even inactive, the operative projected visible instability. His body exceeded 200 centimeters in height, once fully upright, though his posture remained partially hunched due to extensive muscular grafting and spinal reinforcement procedures. Chem-induced tissue augmentation had thickened the operative's skeletal structure beyond baseline human norms. Numerous injector ports lined the sides of his neck and ribcage beneath pale, scarred flesh. Unlike the ceremonial precision associated with Vindicare equipment, Eversor modifications appeared brutally utilitarian. 9X possessed no identifiable ethnicity or age markers anymore. Most of his facial structure had been altered through surgical reconstruction and combat enhancement. His scalp remained hairless. Extensive injector scarring surrounded both temples. Blackened veins spread visibly beneath the skin around his throat, where stimulant reservoirs interfaced directly with the bloodstream. Even sedated, minor muscular spasms moved intermittently across his arms and jaw. Temple attendants avoided standing near the containment platform longer than necessary. Claire reviewed his operational record, while tech priests completed final restraint calibrations. 9X had participated in 17 confirmed extermination deployments. Survival rate projections for Eversor operatives remained notoriously low due to metabolic overload and psychological degradation. Despite this, 9X had survived beyond expected operational longevity. The file noted repeated incidents involving excessive force application, mission collateral beyond assigned tolerance levels, and extended aggression persistence following target neutralization. One report documented the operative continuing combat against corpses nearly 14 minutes after all biological threats had ceased. Claire considered the pairing strategically questionable. Vindicare doctrine relied upon concealment, environmental control, and measured execution timing. Eversor deployment created noise, chaos, and catastrophic battlefield disruption. Their combined operational compatibility ratings historically remained low. However, murder altered conventional tactical assumptions. Megarachnid swarms rendered static positioning dangerous for extended durations. Traitor Astartes, familiar with ritual operations, also presented elevated close quarters threat probability if discovered before elimination sequences could be completed. The mission required adaptability. During final briefing review, the strike cruiser's command overseer explained the reasoning directly. The Word Bearers had already slaughtered 2 reconnaissance teams deployed by nearby Imperial frontier forces. The first team disappeared entirely. The second transmitted fragmented combat footage before signal termination. Analysis of the recovered transmissions identified ritual markings consistent with warp invocation preparation. The possibility of localized demonic manifestation within Megarachnid territory represented unacceptable escalation risk. Claire remembered watching 9X during the explanation. The Eversor displayed no visible reaction to mission parameters. He remained seated against the restraint platform, while injector mechanisms continuously regulated sedative balance through thick intravenous lines attached along both forearms. His breathing remained unnaturally slow, deliberate, controlled only through chemical suppression. The temple attendants warned command staff repeatedly that activation windows should remain minimal. Extended deployment increased psychotic instability probability. Once fully stimulated, Eversor operatives entered escalating neurological aggression cycles, difficult to reverse without fatality. One attendant described the process with disturbing simplicity. Point him toward the enemy before the enemy becomes irrelevant. Claire finalized equipment preparation 6 hours before deployment. Her Exitus rifle underwent complete recalibration for atmospheric interference conditions unique to murder. The weapon represented one of the most sophisticated elimination platforms maintained by the Imperium. Its long barrel design incorporated specialized recoil stabilization systems and advanced targeting interfaces connected directly to her neural optics. Multiple ammunition variants were prepared, including shield breaker rounds, turbo penetrators, and toxin payloads designed for Astartes' physiology disruption. Additional equipment included a sin-skin stealth suit, grave chute insertion harness, monoblade sidearm, and compact Auspex disruptors intended to reduce detection probability against corrupted sensor arrays. 9X required significantly less preparation. His operational loadout consisted primarily of destruction tools, neuro-gauntlet claws mounted over both forearms, executioner pistol sidearms loaded with chemically treated ammunition, power blade integration units, hyperstimulant injector arrays, internal adrenal amplifiers, metabolic accelerants capable of pushing human physiology beyond survivable thresholds. Claire noted the absence of contingency planning within his equipment manifest. Eversor doctrine did not prioritize extraction. Approximately 90 minutes before orbital insertion, the strike cruiser entered low atmosphere positioning above the designated deployment zone. Atmospheric turbulence from Murder's dense cloud systems caused repeated structural vibrations throughout the launch deck. Tech priests performed final blessing rites over both operatives, while servitor crews secured insertion capsules. Claire conducted one final review of the planetary terrain imagery. Jagged volcanic formations dominated the equatorial region. Dense fungal forests spread across lower basin levels. Movement patterns recorded by orbital auspex suggested Megarachnid migration clusters, numbering in the thousands, moving unpredictably through canyon systems near the suspected ritual site. The Word Bearers had selected the location carefully. Isolation, environmental hostility, and minimal Imperial presence provided ideal conditions for occult activity. As deployment countdown procedures began, Claire briefly observed 9X turning his head toward her position. His eyes remained heavily dilated from sedation compounds. There was no expression visible within them. No confidence, fear, anticipation, or aggression. Only restraint. For a brief moment, Claire understood exactly why the Officio Assassinorum considered Eversor operatives expendable despite their effectiveness. They were not designed to return from war. They were designed to temporarily survive it. Then the launch alarms activated across the chamber, and both assassins descended toward murder. The insertion capsules impacted approximately 43 kilometers northwest of the suspected ritual site during local nightfall. Claire Estrelle exited first. The terrain surrounding the landing zone consisted of fractured volcanic shelves coated in fine gray particulate ash. Surface temperatures fluctuated rapidly due to geothermal instability beneath the crust. Thin vapor emissions escaped through cracks in the rock, while distant electrical storms illuminated the horizon in irregular pulses. Atmospheric density on Murder remained slightly above Terran standard, enough to produce heavier breathing resistance during extended movement, but still within operational tolerances for unaugmented humans. Claire immediately established overwatch positioning along an elevated basalt ridge overlooking the landing site, while servitor guidance beacons concealed themselves beneath the ash for future extraction signaling. No signs of Megarachnid activity were detected within immediate proximity, though Auspex readings identified multiple movement disturbances several kilometers eastward. 9X emerged from his capsule approximately 80 seconds later. The Eversor's containment restraints disengaged automatically upon atmospheric confirmation. Claire observed the transition carefully through magnocular optics. The change was immediate and deeply unnatural. Muscular tension spread visibly beneath his skin as stimulant compounds entered his bloodstream through spinal injectors. Respiratory rate accelerated. Head movement became sharper, more responsive. The passive sedation visible aboard the strike cruiser disappeared entirely. Despite this, 9X remained controlled. For the moment. Claire descended from the ridge once initial perimeter sweeps confirmed temporary security. Standard mission doctrine required synchronized operational understanding before advancing into contested zones. Vindicare operatives traditionally functioned independently, but dual temple deployments required limited tactical coordination. 9X stood motionless beside his capsule when she approached. Up close, the scale of his augmentations became more apparent beneath the dim environmental lighting. Reinforced armor plating covered sections of his chest, shoulders, and spine without concern for aesthetic symmetry. Unlike conventional power armor, Eversor combat harnesses prioritized unrestricted aggression over defensive endurance. Numerous injector canisters lined his waist and lower back. Each contained specialized combat stimulants capable of altering pain response, aggression thresholds, reflex acceleration, and tissue durability. A thin layer of condensation escaped from vents along his neck assembly. Claire initiated operational exchange first. Claire Estrelle, Vindicare designation, 7 Theta 19. The Eversor tilted his head slightly before responding. 9X. His voice sounded strained, artificially stabilized, like someone forcing language through restrained violence. No further introduction followed. Claire reviewed the mission structure while activating a portable, hololithic terrain projector recovered from her capsule compartment. Blue tactical markers illuminated the surrounding landscape between them. The suspected ritual site rested beneath an abandoned Xenos excavation zone, approximately 2 days southeast through canyon territory, heavily populated by Megarachnid clusters. Imperial reconnaissance identified 3 possible approach vectors. The northern route passed through elevated ridgelines with strong sniper visibility, but limited concealment against aerial fauna. The southern approach crossed fungal basin territory, dense with organic overgrowth and unstable ground formations. The central route followed abandoned expedition corridors dating back to early Great Crusade-era surveys. Those tunnels provided rapid advancement toward the target area, but carried the highest recorded Megarachnid activity. Claire already understood which route the Word Bearers likely preferred. Traitor Astartes favored defensible terrain that restricted large-scale assault while preserving ritual concentration zones. The tunnel systems offered natural protection from orbital observation and environmental interference. More importantly, ancient expedition ruins suggested possible proximity to the ritual structure itself. 9X examined the hololithic map in silence. Claire continued the briefing. Target force consists of 4 Word Bearers. Veteran experience level confirmed. Heavy resistance probability high. Elimination order prioritizes Malak Voran first. Ritual specialist. 9X nodded once. Secondary. Core Phaedrus. Heavy weapon specialist. The Eversor's gaze shifted toward the canyon systems projected across the terrain map. Alive? Claire looked at him for several seconds before answering. No. That appeared sufficient. The Officio Assassinorum had supplied limited but highly specialized logistical support for the mission. Unlike conventional Imperial military deployments involving supply chains, armored transport, and reinforcement reserves, assassin operations relied upon precision equipment sustainability and extraction timing. Every item deployed onto murder served a specific operational requirement. Claire's ammunition reserves included 12 turbo-penetrator rounds designed specifically for power-armored targets, 4 shield breaker rounds intended to disable refractor or conversion field defenses, 6 toxin rounds containing unstable biochemical compounds tailored for enhanced transhuman physiology disruption. Ammunition conservation remained critical due to the impossibility of resupply. Additional support assets included 2 cloaked servo-skull reconnaissance units operating in low-altitude surveillance patterns approximately 6 kilometers ahead of their projected route. Their purpose was not combat assistance, but environmental mapping and movement detection. Transmission range remained unreliable due to atmospheric interference, forcing periodic synchronization stops. 9X required entirely different logistical consideration. The Eversor carried enough combat stimulant reserves for approximately 9 standard hours of sustained, high-intensity engagement before severe metabolic destabilization risks emerged. Internal monitoring systems automatically regulated dosage distribution, but prolonged combat acceleration could override safeguards. Temple records described cases where Eversor operatives entered catastrophic biochemical collapse after exceeding stimulant tolerances during extended operations. Murder's environment made this concern increasingly serious. Travel through Megarachnid territory guaranteed intermittent combat exposure, even before contact with the Word Bearers. Claire reviewed the final section of the mission dossier while environmental winds intensified around the landing zone. The ritual site predates Imperial classification records. Archaeological references indicate pre-human construction. 9X remained silent. Recovered expedition fragments describe subterranean chambers beneath the basalt valleys. Unknown purpose. Word bearer activity suggests warp significance. The Eversor finally spoke again. Destroy? Priority 1. Survivors? None authorized. That completed the mission briefing. Claire spent the next several hours observing 9X while they advanced southeast through the outer ridge systems. The operational contrast between them became increasingly apparent during movement. Vindicare training emphasized energy conservation, terrain integration, and minimized environmental disturbance. Claire moved carefully across volcanic surfaces while monitoring wind direction, thermal signatures, and visibility exposure. 9X advanced like restrained momentum. Despite his size and augmentations, the Eversor moved with alarming speed whenever terrain opened sufficiently for acceleration. His posture remained forward-leaning, almost predatory. Claire noticed repeated moments where his head shifted toward distant sounds beyond ordinary human detection thresholds. The operative's sensory modifications appeared extensive even by temple standards. At approximately 0300 local time, the pair established temporary concealment within a collapsed lava formation, overlooking one of the abandoned Great Crusade survey paths. Claire used the pause to study the enemy profiles further. Malak Voron stood significantly taller than baseline Astartes measurements, according to recovered visual archives, estimated near 250 centimeters in armor. His crimson and ash-gray word-bearer plate displayed extensive scripture carvings and ritual etchings associated with chaos devotion. Intelligence suggested he rarely removed his helmet during operations, though damaged recordings identified severe burn scarring across portions of his exposed lower jaw. Core Phaedrus specialized in sustained suppression warfare. Heavy bolter preference, siege engagements, civilian extermination records across the Calastin border conflicts. Unlike Voron, Phaedrus reportedly displayed little interest in ritual doctrine and functioned primarily as battlefield security during occult operations. Terran Vallis represented the most tactically dangerous member, besides Voron himself. Former reconnaissance specialist, extensive infiltration and signal warfare experience. Multiple confirmed assassinations of Imperial command staff through coordinated sabotage operations. Boel Corvin possessed the shortest recorded service history among the four, but also the highest documented brutality index. Chain weapon specialist. Numerous records involving close quarters executions and psychological warfare practices against civilian populations. Claire committed every detail to memory. Vindicare doctrine taught that successful elimination often depended upon understanding behavioral patterns before combat initiation. Targets ceased becoming unpredictable once enough variables were understood. 9X interrupted her analysis unexpectedly. "You think?" Claire looked up. The Eversor sat near the cave entrance, monitoring the darkness outside. His voice sounded more unstable than before. Slight fluctuations interrupted certain words, as if neurological strain increased beneath the surface. "I think what?" He turned toward her slowly. "You think before killing?" Claire answered without hesitation. "Yes." 9X nodded faintly. "I don't." The statement contained no pride or shame, only observation. Claire studied him carefully in the dim cave light. Eversor operatives were conditioned through psycho-indoctrination, chemical dependency, and extreme neural restructuring. Most Imperial personnel considered them barely human by deployment stage. Yet fragments of self-awareness occasionally remained intact beneath the conditioning. That possibility disturbed many within the Imperium more than complete madness. Claire eventually returned attention toward the mission data. "Weapons?" The Eversor raised one arm slightly. Neuro-gauntlet claws extended with an audible metallic click from beneath reinforced forearm housings. Each blade appeared coated in dark residue from chemical treatment compounds. "Close." Claire glanced toward the oversized executioner pistol attached to his thigh harness. "And distance?" 9X gave the faintest possible smile. "Closer." Hours later, the pair resumed movement through increasingly dangerous terrain. Geological instability intensified deeper within the canyon systems. Ancient expedition markers occasionally emerged from beneath volcanic ash deposits, many displaying damage consistent with massive claw impact trauma. Several contained fragmented warnings written in archaic Imperial Gothic. "Biological hazard zone. Do not pursue swarms into narrow passages. Multiple expedition losses confirmed." The further they advanced, the quieter murder became. Not calm, watching. Claire recognized the pattern from prior death worlds. Ecosystems dominated by apex predators often entered periods of unnatural silence before large-scale movement events. Even the wind across the basalt formations sounded muted now beneath the dense atmospheric pressure. Then the first Megarachnid corpse appeared. It hung partially suspended between volcanic rock formations, roughly 2 meters above ground level. The creature's body measured nearly 4 meters in length, including limb span. Thick, armored chitin covered most of its exterior, while numerous segmented eyes reflected dimly beneath Claire's scope optics. The corpse had not died naturally. A massive puncture wound penetrated directly through the thoracic plating. Precision kill. Likely bolt impact from Astartes' weaponry. The Word Bearers were close. Claire Estrelle halted beside the Megarachnid carcass and lowered herself into a crouched position near the creature's forward limbs. The body remained relatively fresh. Internal fluids still leaked slowly across the basalt beneath it, forming dark, reflective streaks against the volcanic ash. The puncture wound through the thoracic cavity, measured approximately 12 centimeters in diameter, with surrounding fractures radiating outward through the chitin plating. Heavy caliber bolt impact. Core Phaedrus, most likely. The surrounding terrain showed additional signs of recent movement. Several claw marks carved into nearby stone surfaces indicated the Megarachnid had attempted lateral escape before death. Claire also identified partially concealed boot impressions beneath the ash. Massive, deep, transhuman weight distribution. The Word Bearers had passed through the canyon corridor less than 12 hours earlier. 9X stood several meters behind her, motionless beneath the shadow of an overhanging basalt formation. Claire noticed his breathing had accelerated again. The Eversor's sensory focus appeared fixed somewhere deeper within the canyon network. "You smell them?" Claire asked quietly. 9X answered immediately. "Yes." His tone carried certainty. Claire activated one of the servo skull reconnaissance feeds through her wrist-mounted interface. Static interference disrupted most long-range visuals, but fragmented topographical scans still provided enough information to continue tracking the enemy advance. The canyon systems ahead narrowed into dense volcanic corridors, surrounded by elevated ridgelines and collapsed tunnel structures dating back to the early Great Crusade expeditions. The terrain favored ambush warfare. It also favored predators. The pair continued southeast through the canyon system for another 5 hours without verbal exchange. Claire maintained forward reconnaissance responsibility, while 9X followed at varying intervals, depending on terrain compression. The Vindicare Assassin increasingly noticed signs of Megarachnid migration activity surrounding the area. Web-like organic residue coated portions of the canyon walls. Hollowed carcasses of smaller native fauna appeared scattered across narrow passages. Entire sections of volcanic rock displayed acid erosion patterns consistent with Megarachnid nesting behavior. Despite this, active swarm presence remained strangely absent. Claire understood the implication. Large predators avoided areas occupied by stronger threats. The Word Bearers had disrupted the local ecosystem simply by moving through it. Near midday local time, the assassins reached the outer perimeter of an abandoned Imperial expedition camp, partially buried beneath centuries of ash accumulation. Collapsed, prefabricated structures leaned against fractured support beams, while rusted equipment containers remained scattered across the canyon floor. Ancient warning sigils still clung to portions of the damaged walls. Claire entered the ruins cautiously. The camp likely dated back to failed recolonization attempts long after the Horus Heresy era. Records indicated numerous Imperial authorities had attempted limited settlement operations on murder over the millennia, despite catastrophic casualty rates. Most efforts ended within months due to Megarachnid incursions and impossible logistical demands. One damaged command structure still retained partial interior integrity. Inside, Claire discovered skeletal remains wearing deteriorated expedition uniforms. Multiple bodies sat positioned against the far wall beside rusted lass rifles. The arrangement immediately indicated organized final defense posture rather than sudden slaughter. Ammunition casings littered the floor around them. They had died fighting. Claire examined the nearest skeleton carefully. Deep puncture fractures marked the ribcage and pelvis. Megarachnid kill pattern. Additional damage covered the walls surrounding the chamber. Massive claw impacts, acid scoring, defensive burn marks from concentrated lass fire. 9X entered moments later and scanned the room briefly. Old? Yes. Claire accessed remaining power reserves within a damaged data terminal, positioned near the command table. Most archival systems failed immediately upon activation, but fragmented expedition records still surfaced intermittently across the cracked display screen. Multiple entries referenced increased Megarachnid aggression near southern canyon sectors. One final log drew Claire's attention. Contact with subterranean structures confirmed. Unauthorized religious symbols identified below Site Gamma. requesting immediate Ordo Xenos review. The transmission ended there. Claire memorized the information before the terminal lost power permanently. The Word Bearers had not discovered the ritual site independently. Imperial personnel had located it centuries earlier, and likely buried the findings beneath restricted archives. That explained why the traitors required precise navigation patterns instead of broad exploratory searches. Someone within the Imperium had lost control of classified information. Outside the structure, atmospheric conditions began deteriorating rapidly. Thick ash storms rolled through the upper canyon systems, while distant thunder vibrations echoed across the volcanic ridges. Claire adjusted her sin-skin hood and rechecked the projected route toward the suspected target location. Distance remaining, approximately 14 kilometers. Travel difficulty increasing. Operational risk severe. The terrain gradually transformed as they advanced deeper into the equatorial basin regions. Volcanic formations gave way to dense fungal overgrowth stretching across enormous sections of the canyon floor. Towering gray stalks rose several meters high, while thick spores drifted continuously through the stagnant air. Visibility dropped considerably. Organic decay odors mixed with sulfuric geothermal emissions until the atmosphere itself felt contaminated. Claire reduced movement speed. The fungal basin created significant sniper complications. Long-range visibility lines vanished beneath the dense overgrowth, while unstable ground conditions interfered with prone firing positions. Worse still, the environment provided ideal concealment for Megarachnid movement. 9X appeared increasingly alert. Several times, Claire observed him, pausing abruptly before shifting direction without explanation. Each alteration occurred seconds before subtle environmental disturbances became visible. Small movements beneath fungal masses, brief clicking sounds echoing through the haze, distant vibrations beneath the ground itself. The Eversor sensed danger earlier than conventional detection systems. Late into the movement cycle, Claire spotted the first active Megarachnid swarm. The creatures moved approximately 600 meters westward, across an open volcanic shelf bordering the fungal basin. Through magnocular optics, Claire counted at least 30 individuals, ranging between 3 and 5 meters in length. Their movement patterns appeared coordinated, despite lacking centralized structure. Thick black chitin covered their bodies, while elongated bladed limbs punctured the ash-coated ground with disturbing precision. Several smaller variants carried partially consumed carcasses toward the rear of the formation. The assassins remained motionless while the swarm crossed the shelf. Claire observed the creatures carefully. Historical expedition archives often exaggerated Xenos threats due to psychological stress during combat exposure, but the Megarachnids fully justified their reputation. Their speed alone rivaled lightly armored reconnaissance vehicles despite the rough terrain. Layered exoskeletons provided extensive ballistic resistance. Most disturbing of all was their apparent instinctive aggression toward anything entering their territorial zones. The Great Crusade forces that originally encountered them had suffered catastrophic casualties despite overwhelming military superiority. 9X leaned slightly closer beside her observation point. Hungry. Claire kept her rifle steady. They're always hungry. The Eversor gave no response. Once the swarm disappeared into the canyon haze, the pair resumed movement toward the target zone. The atmosphere grew progressively quieter again. Claire began noticing additional signs of Word Bearer presence throughout the basin. Ritual markings carved into volcanic stone, burned remains of native fauna arranged in geometric patterns, fragments of corrupted scripture etched into expedition ruins. The Traitor Astartes were preparing the area. At approximately 1700 local time, Claire located the first direct evidence of the enemy encampment. She spotted it from an elevated fungal ridge overlooking a partially collapsed canyon intersection several kilometers ahead. Magnocular enhancement revealed temporary fortification structures built directly into the volcanic rock formations surrounding a massive excavation site. Heat signatures confirmed 4 transhuman figures moving intermittently between defensive positions. Word Bearers. Claire immediately lowered herself deeper into concealment and activated long-range scope analysis. Malak Voron became identifiable first. The Dark Apostle Initiate wore heavily modified crimson power armor layered with parchment scrolls, bone fragments, and ritual engravings. Unlike conventional Astartes commanders, Voron carried no visible heavy weaponry. Instead, he remained positioned near the excavation center, directing activity around a massive stone structure partially exposed beneath the volcanic ash. The ritual site. Even from extreme distance, Claire could see the structure differed completely from known Imperial architecture. Smooth, black stone surfaces reflected almost no light despite the storm activity overhead. Large circular carvings covered portions of the exposed walls. Symbols neither Imperial nor recognizably Xenos shifted across the surface in ways difficult to track through magnification. Claire felt immediate discomfort observing it. Not fear, violation. The structure appeared fundamentally wrong within the natural environment around it. Cor Phaedrus occupied overwatch position along the northern canyon wall, beside a mounted heavy bolter emplacement. Terran Valis operated communications equipment within the perimeter, while Baal Corvin patrolled the outer excavation zones, carrying a massive chain blade across one shoulder. Claire studied their defensive layout for nearly 40 minutes. The Word Bearers had selected their position intelligently. Elevated ridges provided overlapping firing zones, while narrow canyon approaches restricted mass movement. Several demolition charges appeared, positioned along vulnerable access points, likely intended to collapse sections of the basin if attacked. More concerning were the Megarachnid remains surrounding the perimeter. Dozens of carcasses littered the canyon floor around the excavation site. Some had been killed through bolter fire. Others appeared mutilated through ritual dissection. Claire identified several partially constructed effigies built from chitin fragments and bones near the excavation center. The Word Bearers were using the Megarachnids, not controlling them directly, but manipulating their territorial responses through slaughter and blood saturation. Claire shifted slightly backward from the ridge and activated encrypted tactical communication toward 9X. Visual confirmation achieved. The Eversor crawled beside her position and examined the distant encampment through his own optic enhancements. For several seconds, he remained completely silent. Then Claire noticed his breathing pattern changing again. Faster, sharper. Aggressive chemical stabilization warnings flickered briefly across the monitoring rune attached to his neck assembly. 9. His gaze remained fixed on the Word Bearers. 4 targets. Yes. The Eversor slowly flexed the claws along his right forearm. Claire immediately recognized the danger. Extended proximity to intended targets accelerated Eversor neurological aggression cycles. The operative's conditioning pushed them continuously toward violence once combat probabilities increased. "We wait," Claire said firmly. 9X turned toward her. There was visible strain behind his eyes now. "How long?" Claire re-examined the excavation site through her scope. The answer formed almost immediately. Longer than either of them wanted. Because hidden beneath the volcanic ridges surrounding the Word Bearer encampment, Claire could now see movement everywhere. The Megarachnid swarms were gathering around the basin. Claire Estrelle and 9X remained concealed along the upper fungal ridge for nearly 6 consecutive hours, while the environmental conditions surrounding the excavation basin continued to deteriorate. The decision to delay engagement was not hesitation. It was tactical necessity. The Word Bearers occupied superior ground. Their excavation perimeter rested within a naturally fortified depression, surrounded by elevated volcanic ridgelines on 3 sides. Narrow canyon passages limited direct assault routes, while collapsed basalt formations created overlapping kill corridors, ideal for heavy weapon suppression. Core Phaedrus had positioned the heavy bolter emplacement precisely where it could dominate the 2 most stable approaches into the basin. Any frontal advance through those sectors would result in immediate exposure. Bile Corvin maintained the outer defensive patrol routes. The assault specialist traversed the excavation perimeter in irregular patterns, while dragging his chain-blade teeth across the volcanic rock formations around him. Sparks frequently erupted behind the weapon as it scraped through basalt surfaces. Claire recognized the behavior immediately. Intimidation ritual. Word bearers often incorporated psychological warfare practices, even when no audience existed to witness them. Core Phaedrus remained the most tactically disciplined of the 4. The heavy weapons specialist rarely moved from his elevated firing platform and continuously monitored the surrounding canyon systems through integrated targeting optics. Unlike the others, Phaedrus displayed no interest in the ritual site itself. He watched the approaches. That made him the primary battlefield threat. Claire slowly adjusted her firing position and began mapping every stable sniper angle across the basin. The surrounding ridgelines provided several potential relocation points after initial engagement, but each carried environmental risks. Loose volcanic terrain created unstable footing, while ash accumulation interfered with rapid movement. Worse still, Megarachnid migration activity had intensified dramatically throughout the region. Claire could hear them now, not individual creatures. Entire swarms. The sound echoed faintly through the canyon systems surrounding the basin. Constant clicking, scraping, chitin grinding against stone. Thousands of limbs moving somewhere beyond visual range beneath the ash storms. The predators were encircling the excavation zone. Whether drawn by blood saturation, vibration disturbances, or something connected to the ritual structure itself, remained unclear. Claire activated one of the servo skull reconnaissance feeds again. The signal quality remained poor, but intermittent aerial visuals confirmed widespread megarachnid movement across multiple surrounding sectors. Several swarms had already occupied elevated canyon routes north of the basin, effectively sealing potential retreat paths. The Word Bearers either failed to notice or no longer cared. Claire considered both possibilities equally dangerous. Nightfall deepened across Murder several hours later. The planet's limited lunar illumination barely penetrated the ash-saturated atmosphere overhead. Visibility across the basin dropped sharply, while distant electrical storms illuminated portions of the volcanic landscape in brief white flashes. The darkness benefited Claire considerably. Vindicare Sinskin systems adapted efficiently to low-light conditions, while her optic enhancements maintained target clarity through thermal recognition overlays. The reduced visibility also weakened the effectiveness of Terran Valis's perimeter surveillance equipment. The terrain advantages were beginning to shift. Claire repositioned lower, along the ridge system shortly after midnight local time. The movement required careful navigation through unstable fungal growth and fractured volcanic shelves. Several times, entire sections of ash collapsed beneath her weight, revealing deep crevices descending into darkness below the basin walls. Murder constantly attempted to kill anything crossing its surface. Eventually, she reached a narrower overlook, positioned approximately 800 meters from the excavation perimeter. The new angle provided superior line of sight toward Megarachnids, while remaining partially concealed beneath overhanging basalt formations. 9X followed several minutes later. The Eversor's condition had worsened noticeably. Perspiration coated portions of his exposed scalp despite the cold volcanic winds. Blackened veins along his throat appeared darker now beneath the skin. His breathing no longer sounded entirely human. Short, intermittent growls escaped unconsciously during exhalation. Claire lowered her rifle slightly. "You maintain control?" 9X stared toward the basin. "Yes." The answer came too quickly. Claire observed him carefully for another moment before speaking again. "You engage only when ordered." Silence. 9. The Eversor finally looked toward her. "Yes." Claire returned attention toward the battlefield below. The terrain surrounding the ritual structure revealed additional strategic complications from the closer position. Narrow trenches had been excavated around portions of the site, likely intended to funnel approaching threats into controlled firing lanes. Several buried explosive charges became visible beneath the ash through thermal distortion patterns. Terran Valis had constructed overlapping sensor coverage across most direct infiltration routes. The Word Bearers expected attack. What they did not expect was precision coordination between temple operatives. Claire identified the first true battlefield advantage shortly afterward. The northern canyon wall above Core Phaedrus's emplacement showed significant structural instability from centuries of erosion and recent excavation vibrations. Large basalt sections remained partially suspended above the heavy bolter platform. A sufficiently placed turbo-penetrator round could potentially collapse the entire formation downward onto the position. Not guaranteed, but possible. Claire adjusted her tactical projections immediately. If Core Phaedrus died first through direct sniper elimination, the remaining Word Bearers would scatter into defensive concealment. Megarachnids would likely retreat toward the ritual structure itself, while Terran Valis initiated counter-surveillance procedures. If the canyon wall collapsed instead, battlefield confusion increased dramatically. Dust, noise, environmental chaos. Perfect conditions for an Eversor assault insertion. Claire finally understood why the Officio Assassinorum had approved the deployment pairing, despite the operational risks. Murder's terrain prevented clean elimination sequencing. The environment required simultaneous precision and violence. A Vindicare assassin could shape the battlefield. An Eversor assassin could destroy whatever remained afterward. Another environmental complication emerged shortly before dawn. The ground beneath the basin began vibrating intermittently. At first, the movements remained subtle enough to mistake for geothermal instability. Then Claire noticed the pattern consistency. Rhythmic, layered, repeating beneath the volcanic crust around the excavation perimeter. Megarachnid movement underground. Large concentrations. Even the Word Bearers reacted this time. Cor Phaedrus rotated the heavy bolter toward the eastern basin approaches, while Baal Corvin moved closer toward the excavation center. Terran Valis began recalibrating perimeter scanners rapidly. Only Malak Vorun remained focused entirely upon the ritual structure. The Dark Apostle Initiate stood directly beside the exposed black stone surface, while reciting something through his helmet vox systems. Claire could not hear the words from her position, but the reaction around him became immediately visible. The carvings along the structure started moving faster, not physically shifting, changing, like symbols rearranging themselves beneath the surface. Claire felt immediate pressure behind her eyes. 9X reacted differently. The Eversor suddenly stood upright from concealment, claws extending fully with audible metallic snaps. "Blood," he whispered. Claire grabbed his arm instantly. "Down." His muscles felt rigid beneath the armor plating. "The structure?" 9X growled quietly. "It calls." Claire's expression hardened immediately. Warp exposure. The realization arrived cold and immediate. The ritual site was already active. Not fully awakened, perhaps, but active enough to influence perception. Extended exposure risked neurological compromise even among trained operatives, especially Eversor operatives. Claire forced 9X back toward concealment, while maintaining visual surveillance over the excavation basin. The battlefield environment had shifted again. Now the terrain itself was becoming hostile in ways beyond physical danger. The first direct engagement began approximately 40 minutes after local dawn. Claire Estrelle recognized the moment immediately. The environmental pressure surrounding the basin had changed. Megarachnid movement beneath the volcanic crust intensified continuously, while the ritual structure emitted increasing thermal distortion across the excavation site. Even the Word Bearers altered their behavior. Patrol intervals shortened. Weapons remained drawn at all times. Terran Valis redirected perimeter scanners repeatedly toward the eastern canyon approaches, where the underground vibrations appeared strongest. Malak Vorun continued the ritual preparations without interruption. Claire observed him carefully through the Exitus rifle scope from her concealed overlook. At closer magnification, the extent of corruption across the Word-bearer armor became more apparent. Layers of scripture covered nearly every surface of his crimson power plate. Some inscriptions appeared carved directly into the ceramite itself, while others resembled burned flesh stretched across the armor frame and fused permanently into place. Bone fragments hung from iron chains around his waist and shoulders. The armor moved incorrectly, not malfunctioning, breathing. Subtle expansions passed beneath the chest plating at irregular intervals unrelated to the wearer's actual respiration cycle. Blackened residue leaked occasionally from the joints where corrupted lubricant mixed with something organic. Claire had studied chaos-corrupted Astartes extensively through Temple Intelligence archives. Visual abnormalities varied depending on exposure level and patron influence. The Word Bearers represented one of the most psychologically dangerous traitor legions because their corruption extended beyond battlefield aggression. They believed absolutely in what they served. Faith removed hesitation. Malak Voren carried no visible fear anywhere in his movements. The Dark Apostle Initiate stood nearly motionless beside the ritual structure, while reading from an ancient text attached to his left forearm through hooked metal restraints. Fragments of low Gothic mixed with older dialects emerged intermittently through his external Vox systems. Claire recorded several phrases automatically through her helm systems for later Ordo Malleus review. Veil? Offering? Threshold? The words alone were enough to confirm the threat classification. Several hundred meters west of the ritual site, Cor Phaedrus maintained overwatch position beside the heavy bolter emplacement. Unlike Voren, the heavy weapons specialist displayed little ceremonial ornamentation. His armor appeared older and more practical. Thick impact scoring covered the chest plating, while portions of the left shoulder guard had been replaced entirely with crude iron reinforcement plates riveted directly into damaged ceramite. His helmet resembled a snarling animal skull beneath layers of soot and dried blood residue. The heavy bolter itself had been modified heavily beyond standard Astartes configuration. Extended ammunition feeds connected toward a secondary power source, mounted beside the firing platform. Additional recoil stabilizers reinforced the weapon frame, likely allowing prolonged, sustained fire, far exceeding conventional operational tolerances. Claire marked him as the primary suppression threat again. Terran Valis remained more difficult to monitor consistently. The reconnaissance specialist moved continuously through the perimeter, using rapid, unpredictable routes between elevated observation positions. His armor retained remnants of its original dark crimson coloration beneath extensive camouflage coatings applied for environmental concealment. Auspex arrays and communication interceptors covered much of his backpack assembly, alongside several corrupted antenna structures that emitted low electromagnetic interference patterns. Valis represented battlefield intelligence. The first word bearer likely to identify sniper positioning once combat began. Bael Corvin remained the simplest to understand. Violence defined nearly every aspect of the assault specialist's behavior. His armor bore chains wrapped across the torso alongside multiple human skulls, mounted directly into the plating through iron spikes. Dried, blood-coated portions of his gauntlets permanently. The chain blade he carried measured nearly the length of a baseline human body and continuously emitted intermittent revving noises even while inactive. Corvin did not patrol efficiently. He hunted. Several times, Claire watched him disappear into the surrounding fungal overgrowth, only to emerge moments later, dragging partially dismembered Megarachnid remains behind him. The word bearer appeared to enjoy killing the predators despite the operational risk. The environment around the excavation basin grew steadily darker as the ash storms intensified overhead. Then the first contact occurred. Claire heard it before she saw it. A scream. Human. Distant. The sound echoed through the eastern canyon systems beyond the excavation perimeter. Every word bearer reacted instantly. Cor Phaedrus rotated the heavy bolter toward the sound, while Terran Valis activated perimeter scanners aggressively. Bael Corvin moved forward into the ash storm, carrying the chain blade across both hands. Malak Voren alone remained beside the ritual structure. Another scream followed. Closer this time. Then gunfire. Autogun bursts. Undisciplined. Panicked. Claire adjusted magnification toward the eastern canyon entrance, just as movement emerged through the ash haze. 3 humans, Imperial survivors. The realization came immediately through their equipment profiles. Worn mining uniforms beneath scavenged armor plating, industrial respirators, improvised weapon harnesses. One carried a damaged lascarbine, while another dragged an injured companion across the volcanic terrain behind him. Unauthorized settlers. Claire remembered the fragmented expedition records, mentioning failed recolonization attempts throughout Murder's history. Some groups likely survived beyond official abandonment through isolated subterranean habitation. The settlers had wandered directly into the basin. They never saw the Word Bearers initially. Their attention remained fixed behind them toward the canyon darkness, while they stumbled desperately across the ash fields. One repeatedly shouted warnings through a damaged Vox unit. "Move! Move! They're still behind us." Claire shifted focus deeper into the canyon. The Megarachnids emerged seconds later. At least 15 creatures burst through the ash storm in pursuit formation. Massive bladed limbs tore through volcanic debris, while black chitin reflected the intermittent storm light overhead. The predators moved with horrifying speed across the unstable terrain. The settlers opened fire immediately. Lasfire impacted several Megarachnids without slowing them significantly. One creature lost 2 limbs from concentrated shots, but continued advancing through momentum alone. Then the Word Bearers intervened. Cor Phaedrus fired first. The heavy bolter detonated across the basin, with enough force to shake ash from the surrounding ridgelines. Explosive shells tore directly into the pursuing Megarachnid swarm. Chitin shattered apart under the impacts, while burning biological matter scattered across the volcanic terrain. The settlers froze. Too late. Bael Corvin emerged from the ash storm directly beside them. Claire watched the assault happen through magnified optics with cold precision. The Word Bearer moved faster than baseline human perception could process. His chain blade activated fully with a roar of spinning teeth before cleaving through the first settler horizontally across the torso. Blood and armor fragments erupted outward across the ash. The second human attempted to raise the lascarbine. Corvin tore his head from the body using one armored hand. The third survivor collapsed backward, screaming, while dragging the wounded companion behind him. Malak Voron finally turned away from the ritual structure. The Dark Apostle Initiate walked slowly toward the survivors, while reciting something through the external Vox systems. Claire could hear fragments now through directional amplification. Witness. Fear. Opening. The wounded settler attempted to crawl away across the ash. Voron placed one armored boot directly onto the man's spine and forced him flat against the ground. The human continued screaming until the Word Bearer removed his helmet. Claire immediately understood why the temple intelligence files lacked complete facial imagery. Malak Voron's face barely resembled human anatomy anymore. Burn scars covered nearly the entire left side of his skull, while blackened veins spread visibly beneath pale, stretched skin. Portions of the jawline appeared fused with metal reinforcement staples driven directly into exposed bone. His eyes were completely black. Not dark, black. No visible sclera or iris remained. The settler stopped screaming immediately after seeing him. Voron spoke calmly. "You came beneath the mountain." The human tried pulling himself backward through the ash. "We didn't know. You entered sacred ground." "We were hiding." Voron looked toward the ritual structure behind him. No, he answered quietly. You were called. Then he drove a combat blade through the settler's throat. Claire watched the execution without emotional reaction. Civilian deaths during chaos operations were expected. Operationally irrelevant unless they altered battlefield conditions. This one did, because the blood spilled directly across the volcanic surface surrounding the excavation site. The reaction was immediate. The ritual structure pulsed. Not visually, environmentally. Claire felt sudden pressure inside her skull as the black stone carvings accelerated again beneath the surface. The ground vibrations intensified throughout the basin. Even the Megarachnids reacted violently. The surviving swarm abandoned the corpses entirely. Instead, the predators began converging toward the excavation perimeter itself. 9X shifted beside Claire abruptly. Now, the Eversor's voice sounded distorted. Claire raised one hand immediately. Not yet. Cor Phaedrus continued firing into the approaching swarm, while Terran Valis redirected defensive scanners toward the eastern perimeter. Baal Corvin charged directly into the Megarachnids, with the chain blade screaming through the ash storms. Claire observed carefully. This was the first true battlefield exposure against the enemy. The Word Bearers fought exactly as expected from veteran Traitor Astartes. Brutally efficient. Cor Phaedrus maintained disciplined suppression fire while tracking swarm movement with remarkable precision. Each heavy bolter burst removed entire sections of advancing Megarachnids from the battlefield. Baal Corvin fought differently, savagely. The assault specialist tore directly through the swarm at close range, chainblade shredding chitin and flesh apart with catastrophic force. One Megarachnid leapt nearly 4 meters toward him, only for Corvin to catch it mid-air and split the creature open from skull to abdomen. Terran Valis coordinated everything through continuous tactical adjustments. The reconnaissance specialist identified weak points in swarm movement and redirected fire coverage accordingly. Several times, he deliberately funneled Megarachnids into kill zones around Cor Phaedrus's emplacement. Only Malak Voran ignored the battle entirely. The Dark Apostle Initiate returned toward the ritual structure while continuing the chant sequences uninterrupted. Claire narrowed her eyes behind the rifle scope. That made him the true threat. The Word Bearers were not defending themselves from the Megarachnids. They were buying time. Then the battlefield changed again. One of the larger Megarachnids erupted directly from beneath the excavation site itself. The creature burst upward through the volcanic crust near the ritual structure, with enough force to throw ash and stone across the basin. Claire estimated its size immediately at nearly twice the mass of the surrounding swarm variants. Thick armored plating covered its body, while elongated frontal limbs resembled siege weapons more than biological anatomy. The creature charged directly toward Malak Voran. And Voran smiled. The larger Megarachnid struck the excavation perimeter with enough force to fracture sections of the volcanic basin floor beneath it. Massive bladed limbs carved through stone, while the creature's forward mass collided against one of the basalt pillars surrounding the ritual structure. The impact sent debris outward across the battlefield and temporarily disrupted the Word Bearers' defensive formation. Claire Estrelle immediately recognized the opportunity. Cor Phaedrus first, she transmitted quietly. 9X did not respond verbally. The Eversor simply moved. Claire barely tracked the initial acceleration through the ash storm. One moment, 9X remained crouched beside the fungal ridge. The next, he disappeared downward through the volcanic terrain toward the excavation basin below. Ash erupted behind him in violent bursts as the assassin crossed open ground with impossible speed. The battlefield entered chaos instantly. Cor Phaedrus identified the incoming threat first. The heavy bolter rotated sharply toward 9X, while the Word Bearer barked warning signals across Squad Vox channels. Explosive shells detonated across the volcanic terrain around the Eversor's advance path, tearing massive craters through ash and fungal growth. 9X never slowed. Claire exhaled once and fired. The Exitus rifle discharged with its characteristic suppressed crack across the basin. Turbo-penetrator ammunition crossed the distance faster than visible tracking allowed and impacted directly into the unstable basalt formation above Cor Phaedrus' emplacement. The canyon wall collapsed. Thousands of kilograms of volcanic stone crashed downward onto the heavy weapons platform. Cor Phaedrus vanished beneath the avalanche as debris buried the emplacement entirely beneath fractured basalt. Claire chambered another round immediately. One target neutralized. Possibly. No confirmation yet. Terran Valis reacted with exceptional speed. The reconnaissance specialist identified Claire's firing position almost immediately after the shot. Corrupted Auspex arrays swept across the upper ridge lines, while bolter fire erupted toward her, overlook from secondary defensive positions near the excavation perimeter. Claire rolled sideways just before explosive rounds shredded through the basalt shelf where she had been positioned seconds earlier. Fragments of volcanic rock struck her shoulder and helmet, while ash clouds consumed the overlook entirely. She repositioned lower across the ridge system without hesitation, rifle held tightly against her chest, while incoming bolter fire tore through the fungal growth above. Below, 9X reached the basin perimeter. The Eversor crashed directly into the advancing Megarachnid swarm instead of avoiding it. Neurogauntlet claws punched through armored chitin, while the assassin tore one creature completely apart during the initial impact. Toxic fluids sprayed across his armor as he continued forward through the swarm without slowing. Claire observed the battlefield through intermittent visual gaps between ash surges. Baal Corvin intercepted 9X near the excavation trenches. The collision between them resembled industrial machinery, impacting at maximum velocity. Corvin's chainblade screamed downward toward the Eversor's skull. 9X caught the weapon mid-swing, using both neurogauntlets. Sparks erupted outward as rotating teeth carved across reinforced claw surfaces only centimeters from his face. Then, 9X headbutted the Word Bearer hard enough to crack ceramite. Corvin staggered backward. The Eversor followed instantly. Executioner pistol fire detonated across the assault specialist's chest plating, while 9X lunged forward through the smoke and drove both clawed gauntlets directly into Corvin's abdomen. Claire saw blood erupt beneath the damaged armor seals. But Baal Corvin did not fall. The Word Bearer roared through external Vox amplifiers and slammed the activated chain blade horizontally into 9X's torso. The impact hurled the Eversor sideways through the ash before crashing into one of the excavation trenches below. Claire shifted targeting focus toward Terran Valis. The reconnaissance specialist had reached partial concealment beneath a collapsed basalt shelf while continuing counter-surveillance sweeps across the ridgelines. He moved intelligently. rapid repositioning, minimal exposure windows, constant scanner recalibration, veteran reconnaissance discipline. Claire waited. Vindicare assassins did not rush targets. Velis leaned outward briefly to re-establish visual confirmation toward her previous firing location. Claire fired immediately. The shield-breaker round crossed the basin and impacted directly into the side of Terran Valis's helmet. The specialized ammunition detonated through the corrupted sensor systems and punched deep into the Astartes' skull beneath. The Word Bearer collapsed instantly. Second confirmed kill. But the battlefield continued deteriorating rapidly. The massive Megarachnid near the ritual structure attacked Malak Voran with astonishing aggression. The creature's bladed limbs smashed repeatedly into the basalt pillars, while acidic secretion burned across the volcanic terrain around them. Voran did not retreat. The Dark Apostle Initiate raised one armored hand toward the charging creature, while continuing the ritual chant uninterrupted. Then the Megarachnid stopped. Claire narrowed her eyes through the rifle scope. The massive predator twitched violently several meters from Voran before lowering itself partially against the ash-covered ground. Its limbs spasmed irregularly, while black fluid leaked from sensory openings across the skull plating. Warp influence. Voran was controlling it, not fully dominating the creature's mind, but suppressing aggression through ritual manipulation long enough to continue the ceremony. Claire finally understood the true objective. The ritual structure beneath the basin was not merely a portal site. It amplified control, behavior, instinct. The Word Bearers intended to weaponize the Megarachnid swarms themselves. 9, Claire transmitted sharply. Voran now. No answer. She located the Eversor seconds later, emerging from the excavation trench beneath Bael Corvin. The assassin's armor had suffered severe damage. Deep chainblade cuts crossed his torso plating, while blackened blood leaked heavily from several puncture wounds. Yet 9X was laughing. The sound carried faintly, even across the battlefield noise. Bael Corvin charged him again. This time, the Eversor met the attack directly. The Word Bearer swung the chainblade downward, while roaring scripture through external Vox systems. 9X slipped inside the weapon arc with impossible speed, and slammed both neuro-gauntlets upward beneath Corvin's damaged chest armor. Claire saw the claws penetrate completely through the traitor Astartes' torso. Corvin staggered. 9X twisted violently. The Word Bearer split open from abdomen to sternum. Internal organs and corrupted armor fragments spilled across the ash as Bael Corvin collapsed backward onto the excavation floor. The chainblade deactivated beside him moments later. Third target neutralized. But 9X remained exposed directly within the basin. Claire scanned toward Cor Phaedrus's buried emplacement again. Movement. The heavy weapons specialist emerged from the collapsed basalt, slowly, dragging himself free beneath shattered stone fragments. One arm no longer functioned properly. Large sections of armor had been crushed inward by the cave-in. Still alive, Cor Phaedrus reached for the heavy bolter immediately. Claire adjusted her scope. Distance, wind shift, ash interference. She compensated automatically and fired again. The turbo penetrator struck Cor Phaedrus directly through the chest plate before detonating internally. The Word Bearer's upper torso disappeared beneath the explosion. Fourth confirmed kill. Only Malak Voran remained. Claire performed rapid battlefield assessment while chambering fresh ammunition reserves, 4 turbo penetrators remaining, 3 shield breaker rounds, 5 toxin rounds. Standard ammunition reserves stable. Environmental conditions: severe. Megarachnid activity escalating continuously. Extraction viability deteriorating. 9X's condition: critical instability probable. The battlefield around the excavation basin had completely collapsed into uncontrolled violence. Megarachnid swarms now poured into the perimeter from multiple canyon routes simultaneously. The predators attacked everything indiscriminately. Word bearer corpses disappeared beneath masses of chitin and bladed limbs within seconds. And still, Malak Voren continued the ritual. The black stone structure pulsed visibly now beneath the volcanic ash. Large sections of the concentric rings rotated slowly beneath the basin floor, while the carvings across the surface shifted continuously between impossible geometric formations. The pressure inside Claire's skull intensified every few seconds she observed it directly. The air temperature around the structure had dropped sharply, despite the volcanic environment. Claire noticed frost forming along portions of the basalt pillars. Impossible. 9X charged toward the ritual site. The Eversor carved through multiple Megarachnids during the advance, while executioner pistol rounds detonated through chitin and flesh around him. Despite catastrophic injuries, his movement speed remained terrifyingly fast. Malak Voren finally acknowledged the incoming threat. The Dark Apostle Initiate turned slowly toward 9X, while lowering the ritual text from his armored forearm. "You were sent by dying men," Voren said calmly. 9X answered by firing both executioner pistols simultaneously. Explosive rounds impacted across Voren's armor and detonated violently. The Dark Apostle staggered backward several steps but remained standing. Corrupted energy fields shimmered briefly across the damaged ceramite, protective wards. Voren raised one hand. The massive controlled Megarachnid lunged directly toward 9X. Claire fired instantly. The toxin round punched through the creature's forward sensory cluster and detonated inside the skull cavity. The Megarachnid collapsed sideways mid-charge and crashed into the ritual structure hard enough to fracture several basalt pillars surrounding it. The impact disrupted the ceremony. Every carving across the black stone surface suddenly stopped moving. Malak Voren screamed. Not from pain. Rage. The Dark Apostle charged 9X immediately afterward. The collision between them shook the excavation platform beneath the structure. Voren wielded a corrupted Crozius weapon crackling with dark energy fields, while 9X attacked with pure close-quarters aggression. Claire searched for a clean firing angle. None existed. The combatants moved too rapidly around the unstable ritual structure, while Megarachnid swarms converged from every direction. Then the structure activated fully. The center of the concentric rings beneath the basin floor split open with a deep grinding sound. Black light emerged upward from the opening, while pressure waves rolled outward across the battlefield, hard enough to knock smaller Megarachnids sideways. Claire felt blood running from one nostril beneath her mask. Warp breach. Partial, but growing. The mission objective had changed. Elimination alone was no longer sufficient. The structure itself had to be destroyed. 9X appeared to realize it simultaneously. The Eversor suddenly disengaged from Voren and tore multiple injector canisters from his own armor harness. Claire recognized the devices immediately. Catastrophic stimulant overload reserves. Last resort protocols. 9. she transmitted sharply. No response. The assassin slammed the injector canisters directly into the exposed machinery beneath the ritual structure, while Vorin shouted something unintelligible behind him. Then 9X turned toward Claire for the first time since combat began. His face was covered in blood. One eye no longer focused correctly, but his expression remained perfectly calm. "Objective secured," he said quietly. Claire understood immediately and started running toward extraction. Claire Estrelle reached the outer northern ridge approximately 23 seconds before the ritual structure detonated. The explosion did not resemble conventional ordnance. No expanding fireball emerged from the excavation basin. No thermal shockwave followed the initial rupture. Instead, the black stone structure collapsed inward upon itself, as if gravity around the site had suddenly intensified beyond physical tolerance. The concentric rings fractured simultaneously, while the exposed core emitted a violent pulse of dark energy upward into the ash-saturated sky. Every living organism within the basin reacted instantly. The Megarachnids convulsed. Approximately 40 minutes into the withdrawal route, Claire detected movement paralleling her position through the fungal basin. Large, fast, not Megarachnid. She immediately shifted toward elevated concealment beneath a fractured basalt shelf and leveled the Exitus rifle toward the approaching heat signature. The ash storm parted briefly. 9X emerged from the haze. Barely. The Eversor's condition had deteriorated beyond catastrophic. Entire sections of armor had been stripped away during the detonation. Burned flesh and exposed musculature covered much of the left side of his body. One arm hung partially severed beneath shredded armor restraints, while black chemical fluids leaked continuously from ruptured injector ports across his torso. His movement no longer resembled controlled locomotion. Instinct alone carried him forward. Claire kept the rifle trained on him while assessing neurological stability indicators. 9. The assassin stopped several meters away. His remaining eye focused slowly toward her. Structure? Destroyed. He nodded faintly. Good. Then he vomited blood across the volcanic ash. Claire lowered the rifle slightly. Eversor degradation phases were extensively documented within Officio Assassinorum archives. Once catastrophic stimulant overload began, the body entered rapid systemic collapse, regardless of medical intervention availability. Internal organs liquefied under chemical stress. Neural tissue destabilized. Muscular systems consumed themselves through hyper-accelerated metabolic demand. 9X should already have been dead. Instead, he continued standing through sheer biochemical violence. Claire moved closer cautiously. You can still travel? The Eversor looked northward through the ash storm. Until it stops. Not confidence. Observation. Claire understood. They resumed withdrawal together shortly afterward. The route toward extraction had changed completely following the destruction of the ritual site. Multiple canyon systems collapsed during the detonation, forcing movement through unstable upper ridge sectors, now crowded with migrating megarachnid swarms fleeing the crater region. Environmental conditions worsened continuously. Ash density reduced visibility below 30 meters in many sectors, while geothermal fractures erupted unpredictably beneath the volcanic terrain. Several times, Claire and 9X narrowly avoided sudden cave-ins opening beneath the ridge paths ahead. The planet itself felt wounded now. As they advanced northward, Claire began noticing signs of broader environmental disruption spreading outward from the destroyed ritual site. Megarachnid behavior had changed dramatically across the region. Instead of organized territorial movement, the creatures displayed frantic aggression toward anything nearby. Several swarms attacked each other directly. Others hurled themselves blindly into volcanic fissures or charged through unstable terrain without apparent survival instinct. The ritual structure had influenced them more deeply than Imperial records realized. Destroying it severed whatever control or resonance stabilized their behavior around the basin. Hours later, Claire finally initiated formal mission review through encrypted Vox recording, while movement continued. Operation designation, silent verdict. Her voice remained calm despite the ash storms surrounding them. Primary objective achieved. Ritual structure destroyed. Word Bearer squad eliminated with probable confirmation on all 4 targets. Environmental contamination severe. Megarachnid activity destabilized across equatorial sectors. She glanced briefly toward 9X beside her. Eversor operative status critical. The assassin laughed weakly at that. Blood dripped continuously from his mouth, now beneath the damaged facial armor. Claire continued the report. Estimated collateral acceptable relative to threat escalation risk. Recommend immediate Ordo Malleus quarantine designation around former excavation region. Additional investigation not advised without full support battle group deployment. A distant roar interrupted the recording. Megarachnids again. Large numbers. Claire immediately terminated the report and repositioned toward a higher volcanic shelf overlooking the northern canyon approaches. The swarm emerged minutes later. At least 60 creatures moved through the ash storm beneath them in chaotic migration patterns. Many displayed visible injuries from the battlefield collapse around the ritual basin. Broken limbs, burned chitin, missing sensory clusters. None slowed down. Claire remained perfectly still beneath concealment, while the swarm passed below. 9X struggled beside her now. The Eversor's breathing sounded wet and uneven. Several injector systems embedded in his torso sparked intermittently as internal failures spread through the remaining armor assemblies. Claire examined her remaining supplies during the pause. Ammunition reserves, 2 turbo penetrators, 3 toxin rounds. Standard ammunition limited. Medical supplies nearly exhausted. Water reserves critical. Extraction window estimated under 2 hours. Sustainable survival probability remained acceptable for Claire herself. Not for 9X. The Eversor seemed aware of it too. Without looking toward her, he finally spoke again. They never expected me back. Claire said nothing initially. Eversor operatives rarely discussed temple operations beyond mission parameters. Most lacked sufficient psychological continuity for reflective thought after repeated deployments. But 9X continued. They wake us, point us, count bodies. The ash storms rolled around them quietly. No extraction plans. Claire watched the Megarachnid swarm disappearing into the canyon darkness below. You completed the objective. 9X laughed again. This time, the sound ended in coughing blood. That's the same thing. Several minutes passed before movement resumed. The extraction beacon signal strengthened gradually as the strike cruiser adjusted orbital position overhead. Claire estimated they would reach the retrieval coordinates within 90 minutes if terrain conditions remained stable. Then 9X stopped walking. Claire turned immediately. The Eversor stood motionless beside a volcanic ridge overlooking the distant ash-covered horizon behind them. the crater region remained faintly visible far southward beneath enormous black smoke columns rising into the atmosphere. "The mountain is quieter," he said. Claire followed his gaze. He was right. The constant pressure inside her skull had weakened significantly since the destruction of the ritual structure. Whatever influence emanated from the site had mostly vanished beneath the collapse. 9X looked toward her one final time. "You should leave before I don't stop." Claire understood the warning immediately. The Eversor's biochemical restraints were failing completely now. Once higher cognition collapsed, only aggression protocols would remain active, and there would be no controlling him afterward. Claire Estrelle did not argue when 9X warned her to continue alone. The statement was tactically correct. Eversor operatives entered terminal psychotic collapse once stimulant regulation systems failed completely. At that stage, all remaining cognition degraded beneath combat conditioning and chemical aggression loops. The assassin ceased distinguishing between enemy, ally, or environmental threat. Historical records described entire Imperial kill teams erased by dying Eversor operatives moments after successful mission completion. Claire understood the danger clearly. Still, she remained stationary for several seconds while the ash storms rolled across the ridge around them. 9X leaned heavily against a fractured basalt formation overlooking the northern canyon systems. His remaining eye drifted in and out of focus now, while damaged injector ports across his torso emitted intermittent hissing sounds. One of the stimulant canisters embedded near his spine ruptured completely during the pause, releasing black chemical vapor into the air. The Eversor barely reacted. Claire performed another rapid operational assessment instead. Distance to extraction coordinates, approximately 11 kilometers. Environmental conditions, unstable. Terrain integrity, deteriorating. Megarachnid density, severe. Remaining combat effectiveness, Claire Estrelle, moderate. 9X, unpredictable. Survival probability for joint extraction continued falling with every passing minute. Then the ground beneath them shifted again. A violent tremor rolled through the ridge system from south to north, strong enough to dislodge volcanic debris across the upper canyon walls. Claire immediately moved away from the cliff edge, while sections of ash-coated stone collapsed into the darkness below. The crater region behind them continued destabilizing. Destroying the ritual structure had triggered secondary geological failures throughout the equatorial basin. Subterranean pressure systems beneath Murder's volcanic crust were becoming increasingly volatile. Large sections of the surrounding terrain now collapsed without warning. 9X finally pushed himself upright again. "Move," he growled. Claire nodded once. The pair resumed northward movement through the ridges. Travel speed had slowed considerably due to 9X's deteriorating condition and the increasingly dangerous terrain. Claire frequently advanced ahead several meters at a time to scout stable footing across the volcanic shelves, while monitoring Megarachnid movement through thermal optics. The predators had become more aggressive since the destruction of the ritual site. Not organized, agitated. Entire swarms now moved unpredictably through the canyon systems searching for prey, or reacting violently toward environmental disturbances. Several times, Claire spotted clusters of Megarachnids fighting each other across distant ridge lines. The creatures no longer respected territorial spacing patterns observed earlier during the operation. Whatever influence the ritual structure exerted over the region had collapsed completely. Approximately 1 hour into the withdrawal, the assassins encountered the first major obstruction along the extraction route. The northern canyon passage leading toward the original insertion sector had collapsed entirely. Massive basalt formations blocked the corridor beneath thousands of tons of volcanic debris, while geothermal fractures split the surrounding terrain apart. Thick steam emissions rose continuously from beneath the rubble, where underground pressure vents had ruptured during the crater detonation. Claire examined the blockage carefully through magnification optics. No viable passage remained. They would need to reroute westward through the upper fungal valleys. The adjustment increased travel time significantly. More importantly, the fungal valleys lacked elevated sniper terrain and provided ideal hunting grounds for Megarachnid ambushes. 9X stared toward the collapsed canyon for several seconds before speaking. "They'll be there." Claire understood immediately. The predators? Megarachnid swarms naturally migrated through the fungal valleys due to dense prey concentrations and thermal shelter conditions beneath the organic overgrowth. Still, alternatives no longer existed. "We continue west." The Eversor said nothing afterward. The fungal valleys felt completely different from the volcanic ridges behind them. Thick organic growth covered nearly every visible surface, while enormous fungal towers stretched upward through the ash haze overhead. The air became humid and stagnant beneath the dense canopy. Spore clouds drifted continuously through the environment, coating armor surfaces in pale residue. Visibility dropped below 20 meters. Claire moved carefully through the terrain while monitoring motion patterns constantly. The Exitus rifle remained secured across her back now due to limited firing lines inside the valley. Instead, she carried the compact sidearm in one hand while navigating through the overgrowth. Every sound carried unnaturally far beneath the fungal canopy. Water dripping from organic formations, ash settling across hollow stalks, distant clicking somewhere beyond visibility range, and 9X breathing behind her. The Eversor's condition worsened steadily. His movement patterns had become uneven now. Several times, Claire noticed him slowing unexpectedly before forcing himself forward again, through obvious physical strain. Blood loss from the chain blade wounds continued, despite improvised chemical sealants hardening across portions of the damaged armor. More concerning were the neurological signs. 9X occasionally stopped responding to verbal communication for extended periods. His remaining eye drifted unfocused toward random movement inside the fungal growth surrounding them. Once, Claire observed him staring motionlessly at his own claws for nearly 30 seconds before abruptly resuming movement without explanation. The conditioning restraints were collapsing. Claire checked remaining medical reserves again while they paused briefly beneath a massive fungal archway. Combat stimulant suppressors depleted. Field trauma sealants nearly exhausted. Water reserves critical. Nutrient supplies irrelevant. Neither assassin required conventional food intake during short operations due to metabolic augmentation systems, but hydration remained necessary. Murder's atmosphere accelerated dehydration rapidly beneath the ash and geothermal heat conditions. Claire handed the remaining water canister toward 9X. The Eversor ignored it. "You need it." "No. You're bleeding." 9X looked toward her slowly. "I'm dying." The statement carried no emotion, only accuracy. Claire returned the canister to her belt harness without responding. Further ahead, the fungal terrain opened partially into a lower basin surrounded by dense organic towers and shallow pools of stagnant black water. Claire immediately halted at the edge of the clearing. Movement. Multiple heat signatures. Megarachnids. At least 20 creatures occupied the basin below, feeding on the remains of several large native fauna carcasses partially submerged beneath the black water. Smaller variants climbed along the fungal towers overhead, while larger predators remained clustered near the center of the feeding zone. The extraction route passed directly through them. Claire examined alternative paths quickly. None viable. The surrounding fungal walls rose too steeply for safe traversal, while geothermal fissures blocked eastern movement entirely. Backtracking would cost hours they no longer possessed. The assassins would need to cross the basin. Quietly, Claire signaled 9X downward beside the basin edge and outlined the movement plan through low voice transmission. Slow progression, minimal vibration. Avoid direct confrontation unless detected. The Eversor listened silently, then nodded once. The crossing began carefully. Claire advanced first across partially submerged volcanic stone formations near the basin edge, while the Megarachnids fed roughly 80 meters deeper inside the clearing. Every step required precise weight distribution to avoid displacing water or loose rock. Behind her, 9X moved with surprising control despite his condition. For several minutes, the crossing remained stable. Then one of the smaller Megarachnids detected them. The creature froze mid-feeding and rotated slowly toward the movement near the basin perimeter. Multiple sensory eyes reflected dimly through the fungal haze, while bladed limbs tightened against the volcanic surface beneath it. Claire stopped instantly. The Megarachnid clicked once. Everything else in the basin became silent. Then 9X moved before Claire could react. The Eversor launched himself directly toward the nearest predator, with terrifying speed despite his injuries. Neuro-gauntlets punched through the creature's skull before it could signal the others fully. Toxic fluid erupted outward across the black water, but the noise already spread. Every Megarachnid in the basin turned toward them simultaneously. Claire opened fire immediately. Suppressed pistol rounds tore through the nearest advancing creatures, while 9X charged directly into the center of the swarm. The fungal valley erupted into violence. The Eversor fought like something already dead. He ripped through Megarachnids with catastrophic aggression, while blood streamed continuously from his own wounds. Claws shredded chitin apart faster than the predators could surround him. One creature leapt onto his back, only for 9X to slam himself bodily against a fungal tower hard enough to crush it between them. Claire provided covering fire while retreating toward the northern basin edge. The swarm numbers increased continuously. Too many. The objective was escape now, not extermination. 9, she transmitted sharply. Withdraw. The Eversor ignored her. He stood knee-deep in black water, surrounded by dismembered Megarachnid remains, while more predators closed around him through the fungal haze. Then Claire saw it. His injector systems had ruptured completely. Every restraint mechanism embedded throughout the Eversor armor now flashed red across the damaged torso assemblies. Chemical vapor poured continuously from the broken canisters, while muscular spasms spread visibly beneath the exposed flesh along his neck and shoulders. Terminal collapse. 9X suddenly turned toward her through the battlefield chaos and smiled. Not aggression. Relief. "Go," he said quietly. Then he charged deeper into the swarm alone. Claire Estrelle did not watch 9X die. Vindicare conditioning eliminated unnecessary observation during extraction scenarios. Mission priority had already shifted entirely towards survival, containment reporting, and operational confirmation. The Eversor's final engagement inside the fungal basin served one purpose only: delaying the Megarachnid swarm long enough for her to escape the encirclement zone. Still, the sounds followed her for several kilometers afterward. Gunfire. The wet metallic tearing of neurogauntlets cutting through chitin. Megarachnid shrieks echoing beneath the fungal canopy. And eventually, something larger. A prolonged roar that did not belong to either human or predator. Claire increased movement speed immediately after hearing it. The terrain north of the fungal basin gradually transitioned back into elevated volcanic ridges, scarred by fresh geological fractures from the ritual site collapse. Ash storms continued sweeping across the landscape, while isolated fires burned along the canyon systems below. Portions of Murder's equatorial region remained visible in the distance, beneath thick smoke columns rising from the destroyed excavation basin. The planet itself seemed quieter now, not calmer, exhausted. Claire reached the outer extraction perimeter approximately 71 minutes later. The original insertion zone had changed considerably since deployment. Ash accumulation buried large sections of the basalt shelf surrounding the hidden servitor beacon, while several nearby volcanic fissures now emitted continuous geothermal steam. Visibility remained poor due to atmospheric interference, but the strike cruiser's retrieval signals pulsed clearly through her helm receiver. Extraction shuttle inbound. Estimated arrival: 11 minutes. Claire immediately established defensive positioning atop an elevated basalt formation overlooking the surrounding canyon approaches. Despite exhaustion and ammunition depletion, Vindicare doctrine required perimeter security until physical extraction completion. Murder remained hostile. Megarachnid movement patterns continued fluctuating unpredictably across nearby sectors. She checked remaining supplies one final time. Ammunition: 2 turbo penetrators, 1 shield breaker round, 3 standard rounds, combat blade operational, medical reserves depleted, hydration reserves exhausted, armor integrity compromised along left shoulder and lower torso sections. Operational status: functional. Claire ignored the blood drying beneath her armor seals while activating the final mission beacon confirmation through encrypted Vox transmission. Operative 7. Theta 19 requesting extraction authorization. Mission silent verdict completed. Several seconds of static followed before the strike cruiser responded. Authorization confirmed. The voice belonged to the same command overseer who briefed the mission before deployment. Status of secondary operative? Claire remained silent briefly, then answered. Eversor designation 9X remained behind during withdrawal phase. The response pause lasted slightly longer than expected. Understood. Nothing else followed. No request for recovery. No additional inquiry. The Officio Assassinorum had already categorized the Eversor as expended. Claire watched the northern canyon systems through her rifle scope while waiting for extraction arrival. Megarachnid activity remained visible intermittently through the ash storms below. Smaller swarms moved erratically between the volcanic ridges, while several larger predators appeared to be migrating away from the equatorial basin entirely. The destruction of the ritual structure had disrupted the entire regional ecosystem. Then movement appeared along the southern ridge. Claire immediately aligned the Exitus rifle toward the heat signature approaching through the ash haze. Large, humanoid, fast. For one moment, she considered the impossible possibility that 9X had survived the fungal basin engagement. Then the figure emerged fully into view. Malak Vorun. The Word Bearer still lived. The Dark Apostle Initiate staggered across the volcanic ridge with severe visible damage covering nearly half his armor. Large sections of corrupted ceramite had been torn away during the ritual site collapse, while blackened blood leaked continuously from beneath exposed torso plating. One horned shoulder guard remained completely missing, his Crozius weapon dragged behind him through the ash. But he was alive. Claire immediately recalculated engagement conditions. Distance, 600 meters. Environmental wind, unstable cross-current. Target mobility, degraded. Probability of successful elimination, acceptable. Vorun saw her almost immediately. Even across the distance, Claire recognized the expression forming across his ruined face beneath the damaged helmet. Hatred. The Dark Apostle raised the Crozius toward her while speaking through external vox amplification, distorted by damage and ash interference. You destroyed nothing. Claire chambered the final shield breaker round calmly. The sight is gone. Vorun laughed weakly. You think stone mattered? The Word Bearer continued advancing despite his injuries. The gate opened. Claire examined him carefully through magnification. Warp corruption had worsened dramatically since the crater collapse. Black veins spread visibly across the exposed sections of Vorun's skull, while portions of his damaged armor appeared fused directly into the flesh beneath. His eyes no longer remained entirely black either. Small traces of crimson light flickered intermittently inside them. Instability. The ritual backlash was killing him. Still dangerous. Claire stabilized her breathing and aligned the rifle precisely between the damaged sections of the Dark Apostle's chest armor. Malak Vorun stopped walking, then smiled again. You left the beast alive. Claire's expression remained neutral. The Word Bearer pointed southward toward the distant fungal valleys hidden beneath the ash storms. It will keep killing long after you leave. For the first time since deployment, Claire felt genuine uncertainty. Not fear, calculation. An uncontrolled Eversor assassin loose within the equatorial regions of murder represented catastrophic threat potential. 9X alone could eradicate entire settlement populations before biochemical collapse finally destroyed him. If he was still alive, Claire dismissed the thought immediately. Mission focus. Target first. She fired. The shield breaker round crossed the volcanic ridge and struck directly through the exposed damage in Vorun's chest plate. The specialized ammunition detonated inside the Dark Apostle's torso and shattered what remained of his internal organs beneath the corrupted armor. Malak Vorun collapsed backward onto the ash. This time he did not rise. Claire maintained visual confirmation for several seconds longer before lowering the rifle. Final target terminated. Moments later, the extraction shuttle descended through the ash storms overhead. The craft resembled most Officio Assassinorum retrieval vehicles. Minimal markings. Matte black armored hull. Limited thermal emissions. Heavy engine baffling, designed to reduce atmospheric detection probability during hostile extractions. The shuttle landed roughly 30 meters from Claire's position, while automated, heavy bolter turrets scanned the surrounding ridgelines for movement. The rear hatch opened immediately. Claire boarded without hesitation. Inside, the compartment lighting remained dim beneath red tactical lumen strips running across the ceiling. 2 temple attendants waited near the rear bulkhead, alongside a heavily armed security servitor. Neither individual spoke as the shuttle sealed itself and began immediate ascent away from Murder's surface. Only after atmospheric exit did Claire finally remove her damaged helm. The command overseer appeared through a hololithic projection moments later. Report. Claire remained seated against the bulkhead, while dried blood continued running down portions of her neck beneath the damaged armor seals. Word Bearer Squad eliminated. Ritual structure destroyed through internal detonation sequence initiated by Eversor operative 9X. The overseer nodded once. Warp contamination? Localized but severe. Recommend immediate quarantine protocols around equatorial basin sectors. Probability of residual breach? Claire considered the question carefully. Unknown. That answer displeased the overseer slightly. Claire continued before he could speak again. The structure demonstrated behavioral influence capabilities over regional megarachnid populations. Destruction destabilized ecosystem response patterns. Understood. The projection flickered briefly as orbital systems updated. And 9X? Claire stared silently toward the compartment floor for several seconds. The memories returned with unusual clarity now that the mission adrenaline had begun fading. The Eversor standing against the volcanic ridge while his body failed around him. The fungal basin filled with predators. The final smile before charging alone into the swarm. Claire answered calmly. Operationally effective until termination. The overseer accepted the statement immediately. No honorific followed, no ceremony. Eversor operatives did not receive memorials inside the Officio Assassinorum. Their existence remained classified even from most Imperial authorities. They were weapons activated temporarily and discarded afterward. The hololithic projection vanished. The shuttle continued ascending toward the strike cruiser, waiting beyond Murder's atmosphere. Claire finally looked back through the small armored observation port beside the compartment hatch. The planet below appeared almost completely consumed by ash storms from orbit. Only faint volcanic glow patterns remained visible across the equatorial regions, where the ritual basin once existed. For a moment, she thought she saw movement inside the storm systems far below, as something large crossing the fungal valleys alone. Then the strike cruiser's docking bay sealed around the shuttle, and Murder disappeared from view entirely.